I'm a motion designer mostly doing I'm like a 3D generalist going in and out of a lot of different areas of motion design that's mainly
Awesome.
like 3D driven.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sunny from the Render Network Foundation. Today, I am joined by artist MHX. How are you, MHX?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm really good. And where is it you're calling from today?
I'm calling from Istanbul, Turkey right now from the east side.
It's amazing to have you here and talk about your 3D work that you do and using the Render Network.
hmm
So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a motion designer mostly doing I'm like a 3D generalist going in and out of a lot of different areas of motion design that's mainly
Awesome.
like 3D driven. I've been doing that for around like 12 to 14 years.
So you definitely know your way around the software that you use then.
Yeah, I mean a bunch of softwares. Being a generalist comes with that. Throughout the years, I've been using Cinema 4D and Octane a lot, and that was always my uh, main tool set. And the other stuff is just satelliting around it. But those two are the main things that I'm compiling, assembling everything inside C4D and through Octane. And I have actually explored pretty much every renderer under the sun, but I happen to love Octane for many many reasons. And then I've actually switched to Houdini and Octane the last
Okay.
few years as the things I was trying to do got a bit more complicated, and the C40 was a bit lagging behind
Okay.
with technology at the time. And then, yeah, I just switched to Houdini at some point.
Wow. So how much of a learning curve was it to actually use Houdini?
Um, that's that's a good question. I mean, it's to me it's a bit unknown because I happened to learn it very passively for a very long period of time. So I was
Oh, okay, okay.
looking at Houdini, like every new Houdini tutorial, every resource. I was consuming it, but wasn't actively doing anything with it.
I
And
see.
a few years ago, I realized that I picked up enough information to go from.
Yeah.
So if you ask like how much time it took to learn it, it's probably like 8 years or something. So I have no idea.
Okay, so to get as good as you, we need 8 years under our belt.
Oh no, if you're like above average, even average smart, you got this. I'm just like taking my
Cool.
time with
Taking
this.
your time is a good way of doing it.
hmm
Yeah. Tell us about your exploration in on-chain data
Mm.
and how that ties in with your 3D work that you do.
After switching to Houdini, Houdini works a lot like a blockchain in some ways. A lot of data is pushed through, and things have dependencies of other stuff, kind of things. So it's like a
Yeah.
very similar pipeline. Of course, it's a totally different thing, but it's just there are some parallels to it.
Yeah.
And Houdini allows you to get like any imaginable data set in it, process it, make anything you like out of it. Like NASA uses it for satellites, or not satellite, the telescope data, and
Mm.
constructing visuals out of it, kind of thing. So it's and medical fields as well. So it was always been used to generate visuals out of data in other mediums,
Yeah.
like more scientific mediums. And that's been super inspiring. I've been obsessively watching like a lot of medical animations, and protein folding, and those were done in Houdini. And of course they're beautiful, and their intention is not art, it's
Yeah.
mostly for education or exploration purposes. So that was always uh, in the back of my head to like gather some data from somewhere and create art out of it, like create sort of. I've also been inspired by Refik Anadolu a lot, which is also a Turkish artist.
Yeah.
that was doing these using these giant data sets and doing incredible data sculptures. So that was another inspiration. So I've I've looked around for ideal data sets to use for these type of projects, but actually there are not a lot of like great publicly available data sets. It's not that straightforward to access them.
Okay.
And in the contrary, blockchain is extremely open. It's a lot of like raw data that you can process, you can make, and it's real people's transactions and activities. It's
Yeah.
pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like pretty cool to. It has a connection to its collector directly, so it would be
Yeah.
hard for me to like. I was thinking about like plugging measurement devices to collectors heads and doing like brain analysis and stuff, but that would
Wow.
require me to access to a lot of people and doing a lot of real work, which is not my thing at all. And so I just wanted to take that data that was meaningful
Yeah.
already to the collectors and combine it with my usual skill set, which is like doing 3D renders,
Hmm.
which I at that time started getting into a bit more programming side of it. Like instead of
Okay.
doing manual work, I've been programming Houdini to do generative art basically. Yeah, and the Zen Blocks project was the first ever real use case of that workflow that I've developed over a few years.
Yeah, I was just going to ask then. So Zen Blocks, that seemed like a major success when it launched. So what motivated you to revisit and evolve the project with your new workflow?
Zen Blocks was always a multi-chapter collection. It was like a dynamically changing uh, set of images.
Right.
We've done the first two chapters, and then I at some point wanted to do something that that's more unique. That's just it's not just like an incremental step of a story arc, but more radical shift in it,
Yeah.
and its visual language, which is actually which got very ambitious, and it became very messy and expensive to compute, and
Mm.
non-feasible for a very
Okay.
long time. And I've developed everything I needed. Like I had this final look and the final motion. I also wanted to have it in motion this time instead of still images, which the
Yeah.
previous chapters were still images, which were computed on my local computer in the house. So and that was 2000 images, and even that was hard to compute because they were 4K and things like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I still wanted to do 4K. This time it was 300 plus frames per token instead of a single frame. And the object that I was now trying to render was highly many times more complicated than the previous version, as
Wow.
this is constructed from tiny fibers and filaments and things like that. So yeah, this is where I had stopped releasing new chapters and started
Yeah.
looking for either compromises or solutions
Yeah.
to make it a reality. And it took a bit time, but we got here at some point.
Yeah. I think the worst thing is having to compromise. So it's always best trying to find some sort of solution.
Yeah.
So with your system, it automatically generates 3D data sculptures from collectors' wallet data. Can you talk us through how this process works? It doesn't have to be too in depth, but just a broad kind of overview.
So the general overview of it is the collectors were already minted a token called data block, which was
Yeah.
a almost like a tiny little currency of this general collection that you can it's like a fungible token that you can burn and get something non-fungible out of it, unique to yourself. So at the beginning, everyone had like a bunch of data blocks that they could use for instead either burning them for new Zen blocks, or waiting a while for the new chapters and then burning them, and then their existing Zen blocks are updated
Okay.
via that. So that burn event that creates the Zen blocks triggers a chain of data processing in a remote server that we are controlling, and it's like receiving almost like 100 data points about the
Wow.
collector's wallet, and these are like derived data points as well, not just direct we plug and play, but we just combine a few data to get another implied data kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that all combines and it gets mapped into a better, more structured formatting that that Houdini can use, and assign to the actual parameters of this data sculpture and the scene surrounding it. And then what currently happens is that that data sculpture is created, and then it's turned into an animated Orbex file, which contains all the scenes description for Octane Render. Octane Render can see that file and immediately, without needing any translation, just goes and renders that file.
Wow.
And it's like a beautiful little package that you can send to Octane. It recognizes it and goes with it. And then what Houdini does is that for every data sculpture, it creates that Orbex file and starts sending it out to the render network for rendering, and then it waits for every frame to come back to the server so that it can do further processing on it, like getting those raw frames and translating them into more viewable pictures and video files and PNG files, like applying color grading to it, basically finalizing the image. And then it
Wow.
sends it out to the server and says like, hey, here's your new image, just replace the old one, get this one. And that's pretty much it. So after that, you have your new token. It's like a pretty neat chain of events that creates this animated loop. That's your Zen
Wow.
block.
So you've been working closely with the Render Network team to integrate the Render API into your generative system. What has that collaboration been like?
It's been really great. I wasn't expecting that involved kind of help, because I was initially trying to. I didn't have access to the API, and I was banging my head on about how to send mass amount of Orbex files to the render network and then receiving them, processing them. Those part was outside my hands pretty much to automate, because I didn't have access to the proper tools and
Yeah.
things like that. So I asked Dino about if is there like an easier way to do this, because I'm mentally preparing myself to do it by hand. But if there is one, you just tell me, please. And he was like, he just said like, come with me, I'll show you the way. And he invited me into the Discord uh, uh, and introduced me to the developers of both the render network API and the local API that runs on your computer, which was more than I need. But then it turned into like me accessing all those tools to create something even more robust than I can imagine. Like Houdini now directly speaks to the render network API. It checks its status and really talks to it and it makes sure the renders are done and doing all the rest. So they were extremely helpful, and they are actually even like allowed me created new API and for points just for like my specific tasks and things
Wow.
like that, which was incredibly generous of them.
That's really cool. That's very cool. I do know that the support team is made up mainly of artists as well. So some of them
Exactly.
use, they use all the tools that all the artists use: Cinema 4D, Octane, Redshift, Blender, even Houdini. And it's amazing to have that level of support from people who
Exactly.
know what they're talking about.
Yeah, they've gone through the same issues before. They've already
Yeah,
tried and tested most of these. Even some of them were even driven by their artistic intents, not even their development intents. It's
yeah.
just like really unique individuals with artistic eye and genius development. It's just a really interesting combination. It's perfect.
So, how does real time API powered rendering unlock new creative possibilities for generative and on chain art?
Um, it allows for something pretty unique for the generative art medium, as it's mostly in a traditional way, and the generative artworks are created via web-based code frameworks like 3JS or JavaScript and things like that, P5JS, and which are mainly 2D tools, excluding 3JS, and they have their own compute limitations, of course, because they have to run real time and
Mm,
update pretty frequently on your browser. So, although that limitations and constraints allowed for some really incredible artworks to exist, people made incredible stuff out of that constraints. Um, since I'm like a more generalist, traditional 3D based person, I was always trying to do like this highly detailed, hyper realistic generative art, which is not that common. I think still is a like
yeah,
an untapped area of generative art, as it became pretty concrete on like uh, the set of standards currently on web,
mm,
like like I said, JavaScript and things like that,
yeah,
which this kind of breaks that mold a bit and introduces some different aspects. Like you can do highly detailed scenes, really perfect textures, high quality objects and designs, which you pretty much cannot do live rendered, online.
yeah,
A what an API powered system, render network powered system does is that it takes the computing process out of the computing burden out of your hands, and
mm,
it puts it on a distributed to thousands of nodes, and then they're like chugging away at the background while you're just monitoring and receiving the outputs, and it's pretty non-taxing as
yeah,
for your local computation, which allows you to be more free, more broad with your ideas instead of like just sticking with a bunch of limitations.
yeah.
So it allows you to do something that, if you took it to extremes, you can do something that just looks like something came out of a Hollywood movie, but it's generative art. It's a
Yeah.
pretty weird, unique, new approach to it.
That's really cool. I can't wait to see how this develops further down the line as well. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm working on like creating that tool set, which is
yeah,
pretty complete actually. So you just plug and play in Houdini. You just put the system in and you do whatever is your art is, and then you click a button and it generates like all the combinations and sends it out to the render network, which is I
that's
think
cool.
gonna be useful
I
for
think
everyone
so.
else.
Oh yeah, I really think so. There's a few Houdini artists that I know, and one of the things they tell me is that sometimes the file sizes can be ridiculous. So anything to help with that will be amazing. So I wanted to ask as well, what specific benefits does the render network provide for your project?
Render network is pretty unique and fits perfectly into this situation. You could have other options that are like either locally render it, and or you can outsource, like a rent and a remote machine to do your computations, which is normally very expensive as it's usually a computer that's built for your rental purposes.
Yeah.
It's like a really expensive process. Someone needs to build that machine for you for a week, and then, you know.
Yeah.
So render network already has, like, it abstracted the computation part of it so broadly that you don't have to think about anyone's GPU, anyone's, computation limits and things like that. There are just like availability is really high, so you just send it out, and then you mostly don't think about it, and someone is computing it for you.
Yeah.
This usually the reverse happens. You send it, you start to worry about your job, you start to babysit it. And if you've made any mistake, you pay for it heavily and things like
Yeah.
that. So I think Render Network created a really nice balance of, like, one mistake for one frame of yours doesn't really matter as it's distributed so broadly.
Yeah.
You're allowed to make mistakes, have like issues, things like that, human errors, and which is not taxed that unforgivably. And yeah, so my experience with other solution always has been uh, either lost me a lot of money, time, or hair on my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Amazing. Um, so the burn event mechanism for upgrading existing tokens into new data sculptures is pretty fascinating. So what inspired this approach?
We wanted to create like an on-chain record of all those events that had the project happen.
Mm,
So from the initial steps of minting a token, then burning it a token to have another token exist and things like that. So we want all that to be recorded for provenance, and also this creates its own data that I can at some point
yeah.
pull and do art with. So I wanted that have that recorded. So the burning is just like a really cool way of doing that, because it automatically decreases your supply of the collection,
Yeah.
and it maintains it prevents you from oversupplies and things like that. And it's a nice event to also, in a poetic way, to burn something and then have something other than that made by its burned
Yeah.
remnants.
Yeah. It's a really cool approach. I think it adds something to the entire project. So looking ahead, what excites you most about the future of generative 3D art in the Web3 space?
There are a couple of exciting things happening in to if we were to speak more broadly for generative art.
Yeah.
One thing is there are like incredible innovations on the Bitcoin ordinals side, which is something which now allows you to compute stuff or store your code or your artwork literally inside a Bitcoin. So
Yeah.
that's gonna open up a lot of doors. I have a really close developer friend that's exploring these areas, and they're like working on even bringing 3D data sets inside of it and things like that, which is I
Wow.
think which is gonna be great. And that part is not yet ready for like 3D rendered path traced scenes just
Yeah.
yet, but it will be, I think, at some point. And also for the other side, for any other Web3 art, crypto art, if we want to call it that, will be is has came to a point that technologically we're now able to do anything we want, release anything we want, and uh, which is really cool, exciting.
Freedom, isn't it? There's that freedom of expression, and like you say, you're able to practically, release whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, not longer than 5 years ago, you would, if you'd like to do something like Zen Blocks, you would need to have like really complicated tools to, have it bring it to life. You'd need to know a few developers and maybe an extra
Yeah,
artist to help you develop the look and feel and things like that. Now everything is there for you to be a one man army.
yeah,
You have everything you need. It's extremely simplified and really powerful tools out there to enable you to do whatever you want, really.
yeah, yeah. And I like to think that Render Network is absolutely one of those tools.
It's a major one of those tools for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. For artists and developers that are interested in experimenting with generative workflows using Render Network's API, what advice would you give them?
I would say, like, specifically for using Render Network API and doing 3D artworks, generative artworks, uh, you'd, I would highly suggest you to check out Houdini's specifically PDG system, which is like this dependency graph system that you can program all of your computer and Houdini to do anything you like, really. You can just have it create a 3D mesh, count that 3D mesh's points, and then make a coffee or in your kitchen, and then come back and process that frame. It's a completely very powerful, robust automation system. So I'd suggest everyone to check that out. Um, and yeah, knowing a bit of scripting helps too around.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you may have convinced me to delve into Houdini again.
Oh, perfect.
I did open it once, but then I closed it very quickly.
It takes a few opening and closing, and then you're good.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The last thing I want to talk about is as part of the Render Foundation, we offer grants to artists. And with these grants, artists are able to, use the credits on the network to render whatever they want. They're able to, do whatever the projects are that they're working on, something that can be very otherwise taxing in terms of GPU usage. Many artists don't have 4090s at home or 5090s now. I know a few artists who have just got them literally today, which is crazy. And the size
Crazy.
of those, they're absolutely massive. But it allows these artists to really, as you say, be a one-man studio, a one-man, you're able to do everything that you wanted to do, which 5 years ago, it would have been very difficult to.
Yeah,
So,
very difficult, very expensive. Actually, that was the first part of the solution to release the new chapters of the Zen Blocks, which is still uh, requires a budget, as I'm planning to mass produce like thousands of, maybe hundreds of thousands of frames,
wow.
and then that would require me to, create a pretty nice chunky budget for it, which I didn't have. So, what that grant allowed me to have, like, a lot of headroom to explore. Firstly, I burnt a lot of it by just messing around and exploring, and it also allowed me to develop this tool set and tooling around this. And I'm just, even right now, constantly sending out jobs and trying new things and see what happens, things like that. And it allows you to, it lifts a lot of the stress of, like, burning through some, your own budget and your own
Yeah.
money.
Mm,
And it's like I think it's a really generous act of the Render Network Foundation for artists, as it's otherwise it's pretty hard to do that experiment in that scale. I'm just sending out
yeah.
thousands of frames a day. It's awesome.
Yeah. It can get very costly, especially when you're in the R&D phase and really exploring how to work things out and how to even use the render network.
Exactly.
Um, but for anybody who's just learning about the render network or looking to use it, what would you say to them?
Let's see. I mean, there are little to no limitations to it. You, of course, you have to upload your scene to the internet at some point to
Yeah.
send it to network. So that's, you'll have to watch out for your, I mean, tailor your scene for your upload speed. As far as I tested, I've sent like pretty large files to the network, like 100 gigabytes and things like that. And
Wow.
I waited around for it to finish, but it eventually, I was able to upload it. And for the network, it wasn't a big problem. It took
Yeah.
some time, and it was costly for the nodes, but it works. So as long
Yeah.
as you can upload a file, then you're fine. But like being able to work practically
Mm.
and efficiently, you might want to look into reducing waste around file sizes, and
Yeah.
also look into the differential upload system. And you can even use that system to, like, if you have pretty common assets that you're using, you can upload some of those, if they're, especially if they're big files, you can upload them beforehand and constantly keep using those
Yeah.
in the network. It's like an insane way to optimize your process.
Yeah, it really is. So differential uploading is relatively new to the network.
Mhm.
And as you briefly mentioned there, what it enables is users to upload a file. And then when they have an iteration of that file or scene, say certain things have changed or new polygons or objects are added, it will only upload the changes.
Yeah.
So if the original file is 100 gigabytes, it won't keep uploading 100 gigabytes. It'll just upload those changes, which is it's brilliant.
Yeah.
How would our users and followers be able to see your work?
I'm mostly at Twitter at MHX alt, and same with Behance. Those
Yeah.
are the two active places I'm in, and then that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I will get those links and I will show them on screen right here.
Lovely.
Let's see how that works in post. It should work out right. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your journey with Zen Blocks, your new project.
Well, this was amazing. Thank you for having me.
Anytime.